Welcome to the Living Centred podcast, a podcast all about learning together how to live lives which are centred on Jesus. Everyone lives centred on something. Our goal is to learn together how every area of our lives, everything about who we are and how we live, can be increasingly oriented around Jesus and transformed by Jesus. He invites us to a rich and satisfying life, where the good news that he truly is enough changes everything about how we relate to God, ourselves, and the world. In each episode, a different person shares about what it's looking like for them to seek to centre their life on Jesus right now. As we hear their stories, we get to learn together and to encourage one another in what it means for Jesus to be at the centre of our lives. This is a journey we are all invited to, and a conversation we all get to be a part of. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, my name's Adrian, and it is so good to welcome you to this week's episode of the Living Centred podcast. And it's my privilege to introduce today Andy, who's going to be sharing. Andy, it is good to see you.
It's very good to see you too, Adrian.
Well, I've been looking forward to this conversation for some time, so this is going to be good. I wonder if I can ease you in, as I do with everyone every week, by just getting you to share a little bit about who you are and what your life looks like at this point in time.
Yes, my name is Andy. I am married to Zoe.
Yeah.
We do our best to parent 3 daughters who are late teens, early 20s. I work part-time for Oasis Church, doing kind of music stuff within the church and helping kind of meetings kind of run. And the rest of the time I'm a recording engineer, recording bands, recording singer-songwriters.
Amazing. And
doing audio stuff. Just a bit of my life, really. I guess so I really enjoy watching weird films and series. And enjoy talking about them.
Yeah.
I like going to gigs with my family.
Yeah.
I like eating food. I like cooking food, and we'll do that with friends and again with family. I'm dyslexic, and I think I'm probably attention deficit disorder. I have attention deficit disorder. And it's just something around me thinking around there's been challenges in my life, and sometimes those things have shaped me a little bit. And as I've thought about it, I've been, okay, I think there's something there. And that kind of comes through in some of the reflections I've had on the questions that you've sent me through. Authenticity is really real and important to me. So authenticity and being real is a high value for me. I have to watch it because sometimes I can just be super over the top with that and a bit intense, and have to learn where the wisdom is that if somebody says, "How are you?" they don't necessarily need a long list of everything I find hard right now. And there's usually a long list. So it's...
I know that feeling.
But the value
for
of
myself as well.
But the value of being real is important to me. So it's managing that.
That's a great window in. One is it shows a level of self-awareness within it all, a level of just trying to navigate then within that self-awareness of, okay, how I do life or how you do life. And then that window in terms of the different things that make up your life is just really helpful. And I guess then we jump straight into the big question. Within that kind of rich tapestry, like what does it look like at this point in time to being living centered on Jesus?
So classic me style. I think I spent so long thinking about the first question that I put off thinking about the other questions. So I spent a long time thinking about it and putting it off. I find it a very difficult and provoking question, which is why it's a great question. Sometimes if I think too hard, I can feel like I'm a bit of a fraud and feel like a bit of a fake Christian.
Wow.
I think a lot of that is around me finding it difficult to be disciplined and to kind of focus. So in my day-to-day life, it's things like quiet times, things like devotionals haven't always been easy. And I think I've struggled to kind of work that out. And sometimes I felt bad about that. What I have found is that being with people is very different. I find it easier to connect. I find it easier to connect to Jesus.
Yeah.
I find it easier to kind of there's a different discipline by being with others, seeking Jesus together. And over the years, that's become more important and begun to be more precious to me.
Yeah.
And small groups and things like that have really played a part of that. The challenge also with that, though, is I can be with people and connect and have quite a deep emotional response to something. But what I found is following through in terms of them being on my own again and then being in pressure situations, it's how does that work out? So I don't want to be, again, back to the authenticity. I don't want to be 2 people. I don't want to be who I am with others and then who I am on my own. But it's like, how does that play out?
Yeah.
a little bit of background about me really is that I think as a young man, I was quite zealous and quite intense in my faith. And what that looked like was I would set myself unrealistic goals in terms of prayer, reading the Bible, what I thought being a good Christian looked like, how to behave.
Yeah.
Like very rarely, well, I never managed to achieve it.
Wow.
And I also would have a lot of hidden stuff in my life that I felt shamed about and kind of felt bad about. And there was a contrast between my ideal of what I thought I should be and the reality of what I felt like inside.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that was probably made more stark by the fact that from a teenager, I would start leading worship, and kind of worship and singing and leading people in worship has been there really since my mid-teens. And the very nature of doing that is people would sometimes think I was a bit more holy or a bit more spiritual.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think I struggled to know how to deal with that when I would feel, well, I'm not any more holy or spiritual than you.
Yeah,
and there's this other stuff you don't know about.
Yeah.
That led on really to my 30s where I just crashed and burned. I think I just tried to keep all the plates spinning. There was an ideal of what I thought I should be. And when I didn't meet that, I went through a 10-year period of struggling with anxiety and depression and working out how to do family life, how to have kids. We had 3 young kids at the time. How to live as a husband, as a Christian, somebody who loved Jesus but couldn't really cope with life.
Yeah.
What was it to know Jesus in the middle of that situation? And I did know Jesus in the middle of it, but it was sometimes complex and and emotional. And really then the last 10 years, I think, have been me trying to find the right life balance. I've come out of that time of being really quite broken. And I've learned it's more about, as I head towards 50, it's about, okay, what does my pace look like now? What are the rhythms? When do I say no to stuff? When do I say yes? What's my capacity? My capacity isn't that big in some ways. So it's being real about that. There were certain areas of life where I can flourish. There were certain others where I feel like I'm not flourishing. So to answer your question.
No, I think you are. This is brilliant.
I think in some ways I find it very hard to live centered on Jesus. But I have seen that the major decisions that I've made, Jesus has been at the center of those. Where I live, how do I do family life? How do I behave? How do I respect people? How do I love people? How do I work? Where am I willing to compromise on things? Where am I willing to definitely not compromise and put my foot down? Those I've definitely been shaped by Jesus. And I think also within that, I have a pretty good memory. And over the years, I've done quite a lot of theology and theological training. This is contrast of kind of not being very disciplined, but at the same time, I'm thinking all the time.
Yeah.
And actually, I mull over stuff around kind of the Bible and theology and around Jesus. It's just the reality of pulling Jesus into the middle of that I think I struggle with sometimes. So I can have these thoughts and I can go quite deep and I can get despairing around it and I can get kind of have questions, but I have to just keep pulling Jesus into the middle of it sometimes.
That's brilliant. I think that's so good. I really love it. I guess in it, what I see as you reflect on it is like, if you just take it as a snapshot and say, okay, what does it look like day to day? It can feel like, oh man, am I going back in terms of an ideal of what doesn't feel attainable? But in it, I'm learning that actually how I do this is really good with others and it's within balanced life. But actually, when you then take a bigger step back and think, okay, what does it mean to live centered on Jesus? Well, I think it's about the way in which I live my life. And as I look back, I can think, there's been loads of different moments and there's a reality in that of both things that I think, this is to be celebrated and other moments of like, oh, wow, that needs to be drawn out. And there's celebration that's come out of it being drawn out, of knowing more freedom and liberty. But in it, of just seeing, what it looks like is in many, many moments of just realizing, my life is one where Jesus, you really are at the center. That's transformed different things, different ways I behave, different things that I do with my time and energy, ways in which I'm seeking to live. It's just that long road of obedience. It's just that. I love it. And the in it then of how that then infiltrates now is like, okay, then I'm still needing to keep saying, Jesus, I need to keep making sure you are at the center of my thinking, center of what I'm saying yes to, what I'm saying no to, how I seek to just live at ease and just how you've wired me, the capacity I've got. of not trying to kind of look back on that younger self of saying, oh yeah, I setting myself up to fail by all these things, of just saying, no, this is who I am. What does it mean then to follow you in that? It's really beautiful, really good. I guess then in that is, you've already hinted at kind of a big part of what helps you is others.
Yes.
I just wondered whether you want to expand on that, or if there's anything else that you'd add in that does help you at this point in time.
Yeah, I think going inwards a bit first, there's just an interesting quote. There was a book about prayer that was written by a Russian Orthodox guy who was an archbishop called Anthony Bloom. A really good book on prayer. He tells a story about an old peasant who spent hours in the chapel sitting quietly, apparently doing nothing. When a priest asked him what he was doing there all that time, the man said, I look at him, he looks at me, and we are happy. There's something around, often I can just be, I think sometimes my family or can look at me like, what are you doing? I'm just in my head a lot, and there's a lot going on. But there's something in the simplicity of knowing I'm known, that I'm loved, that I'm with him. I wouldn't necessarily buy into feeling happy all the time. Right? It's not suggesting that we're happy. I think for me, it's a content. So even within the darkness, even within the confusion, there's still the offer of contentment, and there's still the offer of joy. And so I guess it's something of knowing that.
Yeah.
I used to always be surrounded by noise, and I used to just constantly have music on all the time, either in headphones or at home. And just over the last 10 years, I've just pushed that aside and pushed that back, and actually mostly don't have any noise. If I go out with the dog, I deliberately won't be listening to anything. At home, I will not be listening to anything. There's a few podcasts I like, but in terms of noise, I just need to just have space. It just allows my thoughts to do the million miles an hour things that they do, sometimes overthinking it, but then it allows that to just happen.
Kind of settle,
and then settle. And I think giving space for that. And then, of course, there is the thing being with others. I think family and friends who will challenge me, but will encourage me. Small group becomes really important. Small group becomes the place you get to actually be real within the church family setting. I get the privilege of being on staff team where we get to meet regularly and actually share how we are, but then bring those things to Jesus, which for me, just focuses me. And then prayer meetings on Sundays are a moment of being together in his presence, declaring truth. And for me, one of the key things for me, I often don't want to. And there is a discipline over the years of both being a worship and a worship leader of coming to him and declaring who he is. That then becomes something like, okay, and I'm in, and we're in, and then he meets us in that place, and he meets us in that raw place. But for me, I have to start with that point of who he is, because I'm so aware of my own stuff. I don't, actually, if anything, I need to just get my eyes off my own stuff to be able to declare something of him, and then know him, then meet me in that place. And that's something that those of us in Oasis, I think that therefore we can do that as a family, and that becomes really important. I'm a huge fan of the Bible Project podcast.
Yeah, it is good.
I tend to listen every week, and it's often an hour-long discussion around different themes, word studies, parts of the Bible, grappling with how to understand what is going on and how it all points to Jesus. And I started listening to this at a point when I think I was really struggling with the Bible. There was a point where I just was struggling with it as a text. I was struggling with, how does this apply to me? How does this apply to my family? How does this apply to my neighbors?
Yeah.
I was beginning to question a lot of the things I've been taught about the Bible throughout my younger years, and it didn't feel quite right.
Yeah.
And I began to feel a bit upset about that, because I thought, how do I deal with this? And something around some of the Bible Project discussions have just really helped me to be more at ease with that, to be more at ease with the complexity, with the trauma and the stuff that's really difficult to get my head around within the Bible, and how that points to Jesus, and how Jesus is a fulfillment. That has been revolutionary in terms of me, therefore, being more settled, dealing with the messiness of humanity. There's, so much of the Hebrew Bible is dealing with people making stupid decisions, being selfish, not doing what God told them to do, and then there being consequences to that. And yet God being faithful in his promises to a stubborn, selfish people. And I guess that gives me some comfort that within my stubbornness and my stupid decisions that I make, my selfishness, that as I look to Jesus, he's the opposite of that. and that he's the firstborn of creation, and that his offer is for the Spirit to fill me and give me what I need to be more like him. And so I find comfort in that.
Oh, that's so good, Andy. What I love is you started off by going, I don't know if I'm that very disciplined. And then what I was noting down is I thought, no, you really are. There's a discipline that you've built in because of you coming to peace with who you are and how you're wired. So you're saying, what it looks like personally is I need time for silence and I need to keep it simple God, you know me and I get to know you. You love me and you're with me. Regardless of what circumstances I'm in, I need to keep that in there. And then I saw it's this next building block is then, right, that's you as an individual. It's then the discipline then of you need others. And therefore there's these rhythms that you've got built in of others in terms of family and friends who are going to encourage and challenge, of small group and gathering them, of the staff team and how we live openly in lives together. And then in terms of the rhythms of gathering as a whole church community in different settings and that being needed. And part of that need is actually in that moment, it reminds me, particularly in the moments of worship, of I need to get my eyes off myself and my eyes on you, God. That's it. And then that struck then of that last part of, and then there's the thinking part, which is I realize that I need both my time alone, but with others, but within the space of thinking. And the Bible Project has enabled those two things to come together of, these people are helping me navigate some questions and confusion to then get to this point of realizing, the Bible's just coming alive. This is me putting my words on it, of how I then approach it in terms of seeing the reality of humanity and the wonder of God's faithfulness revealed through Jesus. It's just great. And so it just struck me of you saying, I'm not sure how disciplined I am. And I thought, no, I think you really are. I think it just looks like this. It's a discipline that's different of how it shapes you individually and with others and combining in terms of thinking. Really good. Next question then, I think, is what are you discovering then about who God is as Father, Son, and Spirit at this point in time?
Other than what I've already said, I think the thing I'm coming to now, and as we've recently started a new small group and it's kind of come through that a little bit, I'm contemplating what it looks like to invite Jesus into each aspect of my life. And when I'm meeting with others who also struggle to focus, who also struggle to navigate life, maybe struggle to understand people or be understood by people, what does it look like to invite Jesus into the middle of that? What does he want to say? How does he love us in that moment? And what do we want to say to him? I think I struggle with this the most within my actual family unit. We're just bombastic in our emotions and with life. Pulling Jesus into that setting feels one of the most difficult, ironically. It's not that he isn't there, because he is. It's just how we express that or how we deal with that. So therefore, my hope and my prayer is that in each of the aspects of my life, that it's what does he want to say in that moment? How does he respond to this thing that is the Gordon household and doing daily life with each other? So it's complicated. I haven't.
No, it's really helpful. Give me those three questions again, because I love those. It was how.
Yeah. What does he want to say?
Yep.
How does he love us in that moment? And what do we want to say to him?
Really good. I love it.
And the next one would be, what does he want to say to us? So there would be I guess there's a fourth, which is the invitation for him to speak into our situation, isn't there?
Yeah. But, it's really good. Which brings us sadly to the last question. How are you changing? If we were to have met you 3, 6, 12 months ago, how would Andy then look different to Andy now?
Yes, I don't like this question, Adrian.
No one does. It's my favourite one.
My initial reaction to this question is to say that I don't feel I have changed. I feel that I am so up and down and so emotional, at times so confused. However, as I reflect on everything we've just been talking about, and as I invite Jesus into the midst of that, my hope is that I am maturing and there is wisdom that comes through that. Throughout my life, and as I look at others, I just the sense of when you're squeezed, the real you often will come out, or what's inside comes out.
Yeah.
And my experience is that it usually hasn't been very pretty. It hasn't been what I would have wanted to see, and it isn't what I want others to see. my hope is that over time, as I get squeezed, that it's a little bit less stinky, a little bit less unpleasant, and a little bit more loving. And I'm clearly not there yet. But my hope is that as I get older, that becomes more my story. So I don't feel like I've got specifics, but there is a sense of
great.
The challenge within that. I feel like it's a roller coaster at times, but that within that, if I'm inviting Jesus into that there's got to be change is a hard word. I don't know. There's a maturing and a growing.
Well, it's that more of him just comes out in those moments.
Yeah,
that can only be the conclusion if we're inviting him more in the squeeze. Of course, there's going to be still parts of us where it's like, not that bit again. But we find that, it's more of him.
Yeah.
It's really good. I get to this moment, make no apology. The heart is full. I actually love these conversations and just love hearing just that journey of just saying, yep, when I look back, this is what I see of what it means to just live increasingly with Jesus at the center. It's just beautiful. I'm in. I think out of just the wonder, beauty of all that you've shared, Andy, and just thank you so much for sharing, as always. Just joy. I think I'm going to live with those 3 questions. That's the thing I'm going to contemplate over this coming week. Just those 3 questions. I think that'll do me good. How about you, my listening friends? What do you can consider over the next week out of all of the wonder and beauty of what Andy has shared with us? And lastly, I just want to thank you for listening, and I want to pray for each and every one of us. I pray we would know more of the wonder of living centered on Jesus this coming week. Amen.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of the Living Centered podcast. New episodes are released every Monday, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do like and subscribe on your chosen podcast provider to receive them direct each week. Living Centered is produced by the team at Oasis Church in Birmingham, UK, and you can find out more and get in touch with the team via theoasischurch.com.